Hi everyone. In this video, I'll be going over another lottery winner's birth chart. And this person had won the lottery back in 1991. And she had won $27 million. And so first I'm going to be going over the static potential in her birth chart and some contributing factors as to what indicated the win. And first off, we see that she is an Aquarius rising along with an Aquarius sun. And if you notice, both of these, her rising and her sun, happen to be in the nakshatra Dhanishta, which is associated with wealth, great wealth. So that is definitely a leg up. So if you have any prominent placements in Dhanishta, that could be definitely positive in terms of wealth. The other thing is that if you look right away at her 8th house, which is the house that is mostly associated with lottery wins, because 8th house rules shared resources, gaining through unearned income, gaining through others. And so 8th house is very much prominent, usually in a lottery win. And here we see that she has Jupiter placed in the 8th house. Jupiter is expansive, it's the luck and opportunity. And so that factor alone, having a Jupiter in the 8th house, could be definitely positive when it comes to gaining through others. Now, the other thing that's really strong in her chart is that Jupiter happens to rule the 2nd and 11th houses in her chart, which makes it ultra related to money because the 2nd house, 2nd lord, has to do with wealth, income, savings, possessions, while the 11th house, 11th lord, has to do with large lump sum gains. And so the fact that her Jupiter is the 2nd and 11th lord in the 8th house definitely alludes to the fact that you could be gaining through, again, the lottery in her particular case, which is what happened. But that is definitely a big factor in her birth chart. Now, Moon is there. It happens to be her 6th lord in the 8th house, which actually creates a Vipreet Raja Yoga, which means usually that you can get success, but through adversity. So I think that's just important to note in her chart. And the other thing, that is the main things that I kind of want to highlight in her rising chart. But then when you look at her moon chart, which you should always do, is look at the moon chart as well. And in her moon chart, there's more factors. And so notice that the Mars is in Aries, and Mars is well placed in its own sign of Aries. And it's in the 8th house of, again, lottery winnings. And so here, Mars is the 8th lord in the 8th house, and it's strong. So that's definitely another positive factor she had going. And her 5th house from the moon creates several wealth-giving Dana yogas, and it's by the fact that she has Venus, her 2nd lord of income, and Venus also happens to be her 9th lord of luck and fortune, and it's in the 5th house, so that creates Dana yogas. And she has Mercury there, and Mercury is the first lord, and so the 1st lord in the 5th house also creates a Dana wealth-giving yoga and a status-giving Raja yoga. Additionally, having her Mercury and Venus together, that is the 1st lord conjunct the 2nd lord, and that's another wealth-giving Dana yoga, and that essentially brings money to her. So there's, again, several Dana yogas forming here in the 5th house from the moon, and so that is important to note. Now, in her 1st house from the moon, which is Virgo, she has the moon there, which happens to be her 11th lord of large gains, and it's in the 1st house, so that's another Dana yoga. So those are kind of the main things I wanted to point out in her rising chart and moon chart as far as the static potential goes of winning the lottery. Now, it's always really important to look at divisional charts like D9 or in this case D11, because that's what has to do with large lump sums of money. And so sometimes that's where the little details are. And I will get into that because it's kind of remarkable when I looked at her D11 chart. But before that, I wanted to mention that, what dasha she was running is really important. And so she was in Jupiter Saturn at the time of her win. And again, Saturn and Jupiter have to allude to potentially money or wealth or a win, right? And so again, in her chart, Jupiter is in the 8th house. It's the 2nd and 11th lord of money in the 8th house. So this is why she had won during Jupiter Dasha. Now, of course, Jupiter Dasha is a long period, 16 years. But, this is one of the reasons why it did happen in Jupiter Dasha. Now, the Sub-Dasha was Saturn. And Saturn happens to be her 5th lord from the moon, which 5th lord and 5th house can be very much related to lotteries as well, because it's regarding speculative gains and lottery winnings and lottery games and gambling. So 5th house, 5th lord is also very prominent for lottery winners. But you have to usually have, Dana yogas getting triggered and activated during the right dasha. And these planets that are getting activated usually, have to have some strength. So in her case, Jupiter and Saturn, okay, they're in their own signs in the D9 chart. So that is something that gives the planets strength, okay, by being in their own signs in the D9. Now, this is where it gets very, you can look at a chart very surface level and then you can go really deep. And on the surface, you're not going to necessarily see maybe why somebody won. But if you, dig deeper, like such as looking in the D11 chart, you'll see, like I said, something kind of profound. So what I noticed is that in her D11, Jupiter is debilitated and it's in the 8th house. Now, when a debilitated planet, when you have a debilitated planet, usually you right after you want to see if there's a cancellation. Debilitated planets are weakened. However, what I've noticed is that if you have a debilitated planet, but then the debilitation gets canceled, the strength becomes, it just really picks up strength. And so it's not all bad having a debilitated planet as long as the debilitation is canceled. So keep that in mind if you have a debilitated planet in your chart. But in her case, in her D11, like I said, Jupiter is debilitated in the 8th house of lotteries. The debilitation gets effectively canceled since Saturn is aspecting Jupiter onto its own sign of Capricorn. Okay. And we also see that Saturn is debilitated in the 11th house of large gains in her D11 chart. And the debilitation also gets effectively canceled here since Mars is aspecting Saturn onto its own sign of Aries. Now, this gets a little, advanced, but the point is that she has Jupiter debilitated in her 8th house, Saturn debilitated in her 11th house, and these both houses have to do with, lottery and the winnings, large winnings, and the debilitations both get canceled. So that's the key here. And on top of that, her in the D11 is Moon is there as her 2nd lord in the 11th house. And this forms the best wealth-giving Dana yoga you could have if you have this combination, okay? Having the 2nd lord in the 11th house or vice versa. She also has Saturn there, and Saturn happens to be her 8th lord. And again, it's in the 8th house. And so that there's another connection, money via the lottery, because you got the 8th lord of lotteries in the 11th house of large gains. Saturn also happens to be her 9th lord, and it's in the 11th house, right? So this creates another Dana yoga, wealth-giving Dana yoga, 9th lord in the 11th house. So, and one step further. So then you see that, again, Moon is there, it's conjunct Saturn. Moon is the second lord. It's conjunct the ninth lord, another wealth-giving Dana yoga. Moon is the second lord, and it's conjunct Saturn, the eighth lord, and again, money via the lottery. So I believe this is what made her essentially win during the Jupiter Saturn dasha, because if you look deeper into her D11, this is what, those planets are so strongly, and they're so strong, and they're activated in the right houses of her D11. So that was the main thing there. Now I'm going to go over the transits on that day that she won, okay? And the main thing that is also worth noting is this, that Rahu was transiting her 11th house of large gains, and Rahu is the magnifier. It expands, it gives with a price sometimes, but essentially, Rahu transiting the 11th house is definitely beneficial for large lump sum gains. Now, also at this time, Jupiter was transiting her 7th house and aspecting her 1st house. So essentially the luck of Jupiter was being casted onto her 1st house. But if you know about astrology, you know that Rahu and Jupiter, they cast trines. They make trines in terms of the aspects. And so think of a triangle. And so basically the transiting Rahu and transiting Jupiter were all in the comma houses, which are 3, 7, 11. And so Jupiter was aspecting onto the 11th house of large gains, and Jupiter is the, again, benefic. It is opportunities, expansion. And so transiting Rahu and transiting Jupiter were aspecting each other in this 11th house. And so that's the main thing to take away from here, is that there was an aspect of Jupiter and Rahu onto the 11th house of large gains. And Venus was transiting her 9th house at the time, which is of luck and fortune. It was transiting Libra, so it was well placed in its own sign of Libra. So that was definitely positive. And looking from the moon, the trine of transiting Jupiter and transiting Rahu was both in the moksha houses, and that relates to the 8th house, which has to do with lotteries, okay? One of the moksha houses is the 8th house, and that's the key thing to take away from here, is that Jupiter was basically aspecting the 8th house, and Rahu's aspecting as well from the moon. So these are the contributing factors that, essentially made her win the lottery. Again, the static potential had to be there. You have to be running the right dashas. The planets have to be strong. They have to be forming Dana yogas. The right transits have to come along. So it's definitely a concoction of things, of many factors that have to allude to a win. But this is what I can see from analyzing her chart. So if you found this helpful or useful, please let me know. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe. And if you ever want to look at your own personal chart, I do personal readings on my website. You can book a Zoom reading through there, or you can order one of my yearly email readings. And basically check out my services there. And I could always look at your chart from the perspective of potentially winning the lottery as well. You can just order the birth chart, and then we can maybe focus on wealth in particular. So if that's something you're interested in. So let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video.